Well, welcome back to another Thursday episode from the Boys of the Buffalo Happy Hour. Today, we are going to be talking about video, which is exciting.
News to me. So,
you knew.
Oh, stop. You make it seem like we communicate all day, every day. Newsflash, we do. So, we are going to continue on with our little mini-series of how to start/run a podcast. So, Derek, you got notes. We got a screen. It's a little proctor. Hopefully we can read better than most politicians and knock this out of the park. So if you want to leave a comment, please do below. Make sure to subscribe, become a Patreon member. We appreciate that because that's what really runs this channel. And then if you cannot do a Patreon, just leave us a review, even if it's one word, because that greatly helps us. And you can do that on any major platform. And if you're on Spotify, feel free to follow us. So,
Mike, you want to also introduce our sponsor of today's episode?
Today's sponsor is
I do not know this by now. Yes, Addy's.
Because I'm drinking 70 proof, and I don't want to give them a shout out because it's an RTD, and you know what? I'm salty about it, but we appreciate their continued partnership. Addy's Fine Wine and Spirits, located on Transit Road in Williamsville. If you are looking for wine, vodkas, vermouth, bourbon, rye, scotch, flavored whiskeys, blend whiskeys, MGP products, you name it, they can get it. They have reps that deal with all the good brands, including higher-aged Belvinis, which are all the way up to 14-year Caribbean cask, and they are great people with an in-house wine sommelier, and they have an app. So if you're within the state of New York, they can ship to you. If you wanted to enjoy some of the benefits that we have working with them, like 10% off and things like that, feel free to go on their website and download the app and or search it in the App Store or Google Playground Play Store. Download it and then go through their inventory. They also have the in-house wine sommelier, if I did not say that, which means that they can host a lot of cool events on Zoom. So if you are afraid to leave the house, don't want to leave the house, or you're tired, then stay home. And then
what
you can
I'm
still...
all three?
Well, then you can still enjoy Zoom and go through all the great tastings with their sommelier. So, Addy's, thank you for your continued partnership, and cheers to the future, because this is not the first time or the last time you'll hear about us.
That's a very good point. Well said. All right, so today, everyone, we're going to be talking about video. If you are interested in this little mini-series that we have going on, last week we talked about audio. This week we're talking about video, and in the future we're going to be talking about our editing process, our studio setup, our mobile setup, like some of the equipment that we bring for mobile interviews and all that stuff, mobile recording, all the ancillary stuff that we do, because we just do everything now. Are we even a podcast anymore?
No, we're a production.
We're a multimedia production company, Entertainment 720. Where dreams come to come true.
How much does he pay you? $100,000. To do what? I don't know. So that brings us to our first point, which is cameras. Yeah. So you have the option of doing a single camera. You have the option of doing a dual camera and or a multicam.
So when he first started...
H-word.
H-word?
Yep. People get it. So when we first started, we used our phones because we were garbage and we were also did not know what was up, down, or sideways, left, right, or center. So we said, we have something that works. Let's do that and learn on the fly. So that was a super fun experience. And then Derek took the, 5 minutes and learned that there's another option other than a phone.
Yeah, I remember we were in an interview and the interviewee looked at us and said, this guy's got a phone he's recording on. And it was funny. Like, it was a whole jovial conversation. But I was like, yeah, kind of unprofessional. Like, we just set up my Android phone, which has a better camera quality than the Apple phones anyway. But we set up the Android phone in the distance to capture all of us. And it was fine. Like, you can use your phone. We're not saying you can't. But if you're looking for that next step, we went ahead and did all that information searching for you. So you kind of have two different options here if you want to get away from your phone. You have either a camcorder or you have a mirrorless DSLR camera. I mean, those are two different types of cameras. You can research which one's better for you, but those are the two options that you have. for camcorders, that's what we started off with. We started off with a Panasonic HC-V180. It was a handheld camcorder. Didn't have a record limit because that was a huge thing for us. Is we wanted to make sure that we can press record and not have to worry about it for if we talked for 15 minutes or if we talked for 2 hours.
Yep.
We didn't want to have to worry about that. So a camcorder was obviously the first bulb that went off in our head. Unfortunately, with that, you can't really get a high-quality camcorder that records in 4K, has variable frame rates for like under $2,000 a piece. And we wanted to go into the dual camera setup, which you normally see during our podcast episodes that release every Monday. That's something that we wanted to do. So once we stopped doing that and we got fed up of the camcorders, we switched to what we have now, which are Sony a6400s. They are mirrorless cameras. They record in 4K and any type of frame rate that you're looking for. And that's how we are able to continue to increase the production value of our podcast. During these interviews in the regular podcast episodes, we record everything in 4K because 4K you can zoom in on each of our face and get still a very high quality picture because you're recording your base in 4K. So when you zoom in, it's more like a 1080 picture. So if you're looking to do that and you're looking to do multi-camera settings where you have different frames where we're recording on one camera but we have 3 different angles and you zoom in, that's how you can get the highest quality picture is if you're recording 4K. So next thing that you have to think about is frame rate, which frame rate you want to record in. Industry standard is that if you're recording 24 frames per second, that is the industry standard of like cinematic and theatrical movie type recording style. It makes everything a little bit more blurry for motion. That way you don't see like a weird like no motion blur, which is like, are you an alien or something? Like, why are you not moving?
Which we try to shy away from, especially when we had 3 to 5 people in the shot.
Correct. So we normally stick with our recordings at 24 frames, but if you want to do slow motion, which we sometimes do, you can up that to 60 frames per second and then slow it down in the post or in the production process. You slow it down to 24 frames to get a slow motion shot. And we'll show you that in a future episode when we go over the editing. It's something just to give your viewers something cool to look at. I mean, if it's all one frame rate, all one picture, people are going to get bored and click off.
No doubt. And especially because we were trying to do interviews with people, we wanted to ensure that it was going to be on our YouTube channel side specifically, and most obviously, a good viewing pleasure. So when we switched to the A6400s, it allowed us to do not only a different type of content production style, and then opened way more doors and different things that we could do, but it also gave a consistent shot, a clear shot, and we didn't have to worry about essentially anything anymore, specifically lighting, zooming in, zooming out, and then having a good clear picture that's going to be consistent and conducive for what we were doing.
Yeah. So one thing that you want to look for if you are looking to get a DSLR or a mirrorless camera is recording limit. There's most DSLR and mirrorless cameras come with a recording limit of, I think, 29.99 minutes. And that has to do with some weird tax law coming out of Europe. I have zero idea why, but it exists, and you need to do your research to make sure that the camera that you're buying doesn't have a recording limit, because there's nothing that disrupts an interview more than you saying, all right, hold on 1 second, because we are at 25 minutes. I got to get up, turn the camera off, turn it back on to start a new session, and then do that again in 25 minutes if we talk over an hour. So you really want to make sure that you're doing your research to figure it out. I know for a fact that the Sony A-series or the A6000s all the way up to A6600s do not have a recording limit. So if you want to buy a camera that is high quality, that'll last you for a while, I do recommend going with these cameras. Once you have the camera, though, you have to then think about how you want your shot to be. If you get the stock camera, if you buy the camera with the stock lens, there's still limitations there, specifically when you're talking about blurry backgrounds. In our actual podcast, our episode that we do here, you can see Mike and I are very clear and the backgrounds are very blurry. That has to do with the lenses that we buy. So we have, how many lenses now?
Oh, geez, like 7?
4, 6, 7. Yeah, we have 7 lenses now. The stock ones that came with the cameras were 35 to 55 millimeter. No, I lied. 16 to 55 millimeter. 3.5 to 6.5 f-stop. The lower the f-stop, the blurrier the background is in the back and the more light that the camera lets in. So right now we are recording on a Sigma 16mm 1.4 lens, which means it's a very wide angle lens. It's probably about double arm's length away from us so we can still watch ourselves while we're talking to you. But that gets you a very wide angle lens with a blurry background that you kind of want for these YouTube videos to keep people interested and not distracted about what's behind you. When we normally record our episodes and our interviews, we use a Sigma 30mm f1.4 as well. Again, it has that blurry background with that f1.4 stop with the focal range that is good for the distance that we want the camera to be away from the person without distorting their face in a weird way, which makes them look, again, alien-like. And then the other the other lens that we use to record some of our B-roll footage is a Sony 18-105 f4 lens, and that's just a versatile lens to record any of the B-roll footage, zooming in, zooming out, different types of focal lengths to keep everybody interested that's watching the video. So
next is SD cards.
yeah, those are fun because SD cards are unnecessarily expensive. They're like literally the fragileness of a piece of paper, and they cost like $90.
The biggest thing with SD cards is consistency, having a case that can keep them organized and protected, and then having enough of them to ensure that whatever content you're capturing, you're not going to lose. So the SD card recommendation are the extremes. However, you want as many gigs as possible. So most commonly there's 128 gigs. I know a lot of professional photographers that use gigabyte sizes around that range as well for weddings. But what you're able to then do is ensure that you don't have to consistently stop and then change an SD card, which in the heat of a moment can be tedious. You can break them easily, like to Derek's point about how fragile they are, but then third, they're temperamental. So if there's any type of scratch or things like that on certain parts of the SD card that it won't read properly, and then your camera's going to be like, no SD card inserted. And you're like, why? And then you look at it, and then you realize that something chipped off. And if you're in the middle of an interview, if you're in the middle of getting B-roll footage, or if you're the photographer and it's the middle of the wedding, and you just lost an SD card, you're going to be fairly upset and annoyed with yourself just because it's very easy to put yourself in that position. So you want to, like to Derek's point, even though it's expensive, you want backups on backups because that contingency really does matter.
Yeah, the SD card that we use is the SanDisk Extreme Pro 128 gig. Each hour-long episode that we record is 60 gigabytes for each camera. So if you do have a 128, you can record technically 2 sets of interviews, but don't recommend that because if you go over, it's very easy to go over and then you're screwed because the camera will just stop recording. So invest in a good quality SD card. You will not regret it. Finally, we just have some camera accessories that we would recommend you pick up just to make your life a little bit easier when you are recording. And this is specific to the indoor studio, I guess, because we're going to do a whole series on, or a whole episode on our external mobile setup that has different types of accessories that go along with it. But Mike, you want to talk about the accessories that we have there?
Tripods, which is huge for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. The quick release mounts are by far one of the best things we've ever purchased because your camera snaps right into it, and then it's just 2 buttons on either side that you just pinch and your camera slides right out. So what we did from there is we attached the tripods upside down to the ceiling joists and then put the quick release mounts onto it, so we have a consistent shot every single time. So our studio is permanent, essentially. From there, we have a gimbal, and the gimbal's great because it's extremely versatile. We use it for B-roll footage, we use it for interviews, we use it to create content, but then also get thumbnails and other B-roll footage that we do within the studio. Next is white balance cards. This is great, and they fold within themselves, so they're very small, very compact, and they serve a wonderful purpose in getting a good, clear shot for your viewers, because at the end of the day, their experience is really what matters, so your due diligence on the front end is going to help that. So the white balance cards ensure that you're getting the proper amount of lighting, and then the background is kind of ensure that it's blurred out, but there's focus, and you're not drowning yourself out with a bunch of other light.
Yeah, just making sure that your whites are actually white.
Yep.
Because nothing is worse than looking at somebody that is extremely orange or blue, depending on the hue of color that the light is putting out. So that's what those white balance cards are. It's like, here's a white, here's what the camera can see. This is pure white, so adjust yourself to that. All right, now we're good, and then we can record.
And then obviously you just want to make sure that you do your own checks and inspections before you start recording and or packing. So always have extra batteries and a battery charger, because at the end of the day, if your equipment's dead, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
The continuous power adapter, this is the fake battery.
Yes.
And this thing is amazing. The reason being is it tricks the camera into thinking the battery is always full. And then the power adapter is just a single volt 110 two-prong. So you're able to plug it into any power strip, and then your camera's just going to function as long as you need it to, which is great for us, not only in the studio, but then while we are recording interviews. So for the A6400, I think it's safe to say we recommend that it's mandatory to buy one of these with the camera. If you're trying to do something along these lines regarding content capture, podcasts, and interviews.
Yeah, the recording limit is great and all, but if you don't have a continuous power supply, your camera's only going to last as long as the battery does. And the more that you use the battery, the less effective it's going to be. So we picked these up. I think that they were like $25 a piece online. They weren't that expensive, and they definitely help. They do say, like, careful, because some of them can explode the camera, but we've been using it for a year now, I think, with no issues. Is it just explodes right now?
Yeah, seriously.
That'd be super ironic. But anyway, so that is the listing of video equipment that we use, that we recommend, and we've been using basically from the start. Like Mike was saying, we got these not too long ago because we started with the Panasonic camcorders, and if we were to go back to starting this podcast, we wouldn't have started on our phones. We wouldn't have then transitioned to a camcorder. We would have just went right directly to the Sony A6400s, because they're basically future-proof. And you can continuously upgrade lenses, switch lenses out, press this button, remove this lens, put on a different lens, and it is super versatile for whatever your situation is. That's why it's just one of the best things, just to start with an expensive camera, something that's going to last for a while, and then invest in high-quality equipment going forward. Because, again, if your content isn't visible, if you're blurry, if your interviewer is blurry, not only are you doing yourself a disservice because you're not capturing everything to the fullest extent, but you're also going to be doing the interviewee a disservice too, because now their video quality is like all crappy, and they're going to be super either mad or feel like they didn't get a fair shot at being interviewed, you know?
Correct.
So that is our video segment. If you have anything else that you want to ask us regarding our video setup, leave a comment down below. And also be excited for next week, because we are going to be talking about... No, we're not going to do edit. We're going to do the mobile setup next week. And that is something that we've done a lot of preparation for and investment in to make sure that our equipment is safe. And it's going to be a cool episode. And then after that, we're going to do our studio tour, going around that, which is going to be very exciting. And then we're going to round up the whole section with an editing guidance. Because editing multi-camera gave me extreme heartburn when I first started, because I had zero idea what I was doing, and everything started crashing, and I was super aggravated.
That was a super fun time.
It was.
So, yes, everybody, tune in next week and hear more about how to not fail the way we did.
Correct.
Basically.
We did all the research for you. So if you have somebody in your life that is looking to start a podcast, feel free to forward them this series. Let them reap the benefits of all of our heartache. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Please remember to always drink responsibly. Be a good person. And Michael,
do not litter.
We're out.